Okay, so we're off and running, 10 o'clock on the dot. Thank you for being prompt, Mattia. And yes, as some people who have joined the webinar early, and we already have the comments flying in and a couple of comedians attending this morning. So as I joined and let Mattia into the webinar, the first thing I noticed this morning was a look of surprise, because quite clearly I am not Adrian Hanna. So Mattia was clearly disappointed, and I'm sure our attendees will be as well. So Adrian does send her apologies to everybody. There is a technical issue, which in short is a large power cut. So unfortunately, you are stuck with me hosting the webinar this morning. But good morning to everybody, and thanks for joining. And although it says my name is Adrian Hanna, you can quite clearly see I'm not. Nowhere near as good looking and not as smart, but my name is George Titlow. So I look after the business development for Right Revenue and stepping in to host the webinar this morning. So good morning to everybody. Thanks for your comments. There was quite a lot of concern coming in from some of the early attendees about what happened to Adrian. So rest assured, she is fine. She still looks the same in reality. And yes, I'm just stepping in. So, but yeah, very excited to be hosting and welcome Mattia this morning. So welcome, Mattia.
Thank you, George, for the intro. Happy to be here.
No problem at all. So yeah, as is our normal custom, I'll hand over to you and let you pretty much run the webinar in a couple of minutes. But just wanted to give a brief introduction, just because we're conscious that whilst we have some people who are regular attendees of our series, some of them might be joined specifically to have a look at Oaky or to hear Mattia speak, or have just heard about the webinars. So first introduction is to Revenue Ready, the series of webinars. So this is a series. We're now in series 3 because the webinars have been so popular, and they were launched just as a way of supporting hoteliers in lockdown. So a way of keeping members of staff and hoteliers engaged with the industry. And every session is kind of really laser focused on giving hoteliers key takeaways. No selling, so thank you, Mattia. We're quite strict on that, no selling, but really trying to be, as I said, focused on giving real takeaways for hoteliers that they can implement. Aside from that, if you're not aware of Right Revenue and who we are, Right Revenue are a revenue management software specifically for the hospitality industry. So we're really laser focused as well, and we're focused on helping independent hoteliers, mainly on saving time and increasing their revenue. So a nice synergy with your upselling and increasing revenue as well there, Mattia, because I know that's what Oaky are all about. So the webinar today, as I said, will be run by Mattia from Oaky. For anyone who's not aware of Oaky, Mattia will give a bit of an introduction, but a fantastic upselling tool. And today the webinar will be all about key tips for your team and how to engage them in upselling. In a time where I think everyone agrees, every bit of revenue matters, and upselling is something which is perhaps overlooked sometimes, and Mattia is going to talk to us about the importance of it and how you can start to really engage with that at your property. So I've had a quick look through Mattia's slides today. I don't want to steal your thunder, Mattia, but there is The Simpsons, there's animated GIFs, there's goldfish, there's pots of jam. I mean, how have you got all this into a webinar on upselling in hotels? I don't know. I commend you, and I think it's going to be really fun and really interesting. So I'm looking forward to it. But first of all, just a brief introduction to Mattia, who is passionate about travel, mountains, and sport. He studied in Venice, so Italian. Buongiorno, Mattia. And landed in the software industry after studying in Venice. He's been helping Oaky expand for the last 3 years or 3.5 years, I believe. And one of his favorite sayings, which I absolutely love, Mattia, there is always an opportunity. So I love that, and I'm going to take that as my opportunity to hand over to you. If you want to do any introductions on yourself or the company, feel free. And if you share your screen, I'll hand over control to you. And as usual, Mattia, as we discussed, you said you don't mind. I'm just going to jump in and interrupt you with questions as they come in from our attendees.
Of course, please do so. Yeah, and thanks for the great intro. Setting high expectations. No, very, very happy to be here, and thanks for inviting. Indeed, I think the session is really going to be about tips. Hopefully, you'll see a few things that you could apply right away tomorrow in a very, more or less, a very easy way. And I think some of this is very critical today in the historical moment we're living in, considering then, as you said, a bit of revenue is welcome today more than ever. And if we can really push the bar a bit higher than what we did in the past, I think this is going to be key in the reopening phase that we're starting to see in different countries across Europe. So looking forward to see that happening. I'm calling you from Amsterdam. The headquarters of Oaky is indeed here. We've got a bit of a few nice days, and upselling is a cool topic these days. Why so? I think it's one of the few weapons, George, that hoteliers have today to actually get extra revenue, extra cash from existing reservations. And as you struggle with occupancy, this becomes really, really key. So I hope you can find a lot of insightful knowledge today, but happy also to share more with George eventually after the session. I will really get started maybe from the very beginning, no, when upselling was born and how it is done probably in a lot of properties still today. There's a lot of manual work behind the scenes, and this happens at front desk, but I would say it happens to some extent also in different moments of the customer journey, when a guest wants to do a late checkout and they're staying with you already, or when they want breakfast or parking few days before arriving at a hotel. Just these two deals like represent a tons of interactions, guest, hotel. So I guess the question and what I want to bring to you all today is really maybe pause for a second and ask ourselves, how do we want our upselling to be in the next 10 years? Why is that? Because we did something before the pandemic, then the pandemic gave us this opportunity to maybe rethink a lot of things. And I'm sure a lot of you have worked on the product, which is maybe the number one thing to do. And then after that, start thinking about the customer journey, and upselling being part of it, then really, stresses the fact that we have to maybe think about, okay, how do I want my upselling to be? A lot of answers here. There's of course a word that everybody's been saying, which is contactless, and I agree to some extent, because we really want to have a close human touch with our customers. A lot of people will say relevancy, making sure we offer only what's relevant to different people. That's what happens when you enter Netflix or your Spotify or your Google Maps and stuff. We see and have suggestion of what's important to us. Somebody will say responsive or online or digital. And of course, these are all things that come together in a strategy that has to be developed by the hotel team. So I think today, with the goal of bringing some good tips to everybody, we will be focusing on these four areas, mostly relevancy, creativity, and maybe also merchandise, which is a bit new, but I would say will play a big role in the future. So when it comes to relevancy, I think we need to ask ourselves, okay, what do my customers care about? What do they expect? And this is something that from a technology provider, we know to some extent because we have a lot of data, but the hotels knows much better because every front office manager or revenue manager, distribution we speak to, they know who their customers are. They have changed a little bit after this crisis. So it will be interesting to ask again this question. Now that my eventually customers have changed, what is important to them and what are they looking for? If I have a staycation, I have a family, what is relevant to them? A second topic is creativity, and I will show you a few examples that also George was mentioning before. We got hotels getting really crazy when it comes to do upselling, and why not? Why shouldn't we? I'm not saying we shouldn't do breakfast, parking, or late checkout, transfer to the airport, which is the most traditional ones. But why not surprising the guest, kind of getting them to say, hey, wait, this is what the hotel is offering me? How comes, or what's the story behind this? How cool, no, is getting the guest to really wonder what expects them at the property when they arrive. And when it comes to merchandising, is really thinking about our product and eventually finding new ways of selling the same thing, but in a smarter way. And I think this brings a lot of opportunities. So as you were saying, George, before, I always speak to a hotel, and some of them sometimes say, maybe I don't have, that many room types, or maybe I don't have that many services. And I always say, well, there's always an opportunity if we look at things a bit differently. And that's something we have the opportunity today to do. So starting from relevancy, maybe the very first step here is to, as I mentioned before, understanding who our customers are. And this is important for, of course, all your marketing efforts. You do this on a revenue strategy when you think about your pricing. Upselling is not different from that, right? If we know our customers, then we know when they have the higher chances to actually spend money on something extra that we are offering. Because that's upselling at the end, no? Persuading somebody to get something additional, eventually spending more money for it. Not always, doesn't have always to be more expensive, but that's ultimately, of course, our goal. So once we have an idea of who our customers are, I think the second important question to ask ourselves is, what are the communication channels they use? And what are the communication channels they want us to reach out to? Because if I use a lot of WhatsApp, doesn't mean that I expect my hotel to actually reach out via WhatsApp. Maybe I'm more comfortable to receive an email from them. So that's some study that needs to be done, some analysis that we need to do. And these also determine, in which moment of the customer journey we want to do it. Because if it's front desk, can be in person, but if it's pre-stay, maybe it's when we can start using SMS, WhatsApp, or emailing. And finally, which is, yeah, George?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to jump in already and just say, when you talk about the communication channels and even where in the guest journey, would you say, Mattia, that this is something which is different depending hotel by hotel, or is there any kind of rules of thumb about which channels work best, or is it just about knowing your own customers and then segmenting even further, perhaps to understand which channel is best to communicate with them?
I think it's two things here. One is the customer indeed. And when you say customer, it's also the age of the customer. Maybe with a millennial, you can use a different approach than you use with the older customer base. A second aspect is instead the time of the customer journey, because we've seen emailing working very well in pre-stay, for example, but in stay, it looks like SMS or WhatsApp or QR codes work better, right? Okay. Yeah. Depending on also the mood and the moments we get in touch with the guest. So I would say it's a bit of both.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and once we got the communication channel in mind for every customer, I would say a big thing is also to think of what are the actions that I want my customers to take. It's not just buying something extra, but what if I want my customers to download a mobile application of my brand? What if I want them to subscribe to a loyalty program? What if I want them to book a table? So some of these things don't bring direct revenue in immediately, right? But definitely are an opportunity for having them to do something we're interested about. Because there are a lot of KPIs in your hotel. The revenue KPIs, and you have the marketing KPIs, operation has its own, brand-wise, we maybe want to achieve high reviews and stuff. So what are other things that I can leverage upselling for and get my customer to do extra things? For example, also an online check-in. This could be driven starting from an upselling effort. So thinking about relevancy, let's maybe see a few examples, starting from the most traditional one and also best-selling deal in Oaky for the last 2 years, which is pretty intuitive. It's breakfast throughout the stay. Of course, you see here that this deal has a discount. So the easiest thing that our hotels are doing is offering the breakfast, but with a discount to all the guests that don't have it included already. Because if I have the breakfast included already and I've paid 50 euros for it, I will not be happy to see that it's offered with a discount to other guests. And also you may confuse the guest who has it included already, because they say, if they're showing it to me, maybe it's because I don't have it, then I should reach out to the hotel, and then we are actually adding communications with the hotel instead of streamlining the whole process. So one good takeaway here for everybody is leverage your rate codes. You have them to help you with distribution. You can have them to help you in your upselling and your offering throughout the customer journey. The more granular you are with your rate codes, market codes, meal plans, the more relevant you can be to guests whenever you speak to them. Another example, which is really, really loved by collections, groups that work a lot on their branding, or they have maybe clubs or loyalty programs, is targeting OTA guests or non-direct guests and offer them ways to become direct and repeaters. How crucial is this, right? Having guests to spend more time with us, maybe a few times per year or once per year. So if we are able to, show something relevant, which could be a free drink or a discounted F&B package or a romantic package, anything else to some OTA bookers, automatically we have some chances to get them to become direct, maybe visit our webpage, or maybe sign up through our loyalty, let's say, landing page.
So this is interesting, Mattia, because a couple of times already you've touched on things which actually are kind of maybe a little bit outside the traditional sphere of upselling. And as you said, it's kind of thinking outside the box, not only for the creative things that you're going to talk about a bit later, perhaps, but also outside of just traditional or direct revenue, and thinking about what you want to do with the guest and how you want them to engage with the hotel or your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think historically upselling has always been seen as a process to push down some extra sales and get some extra cash in, which is nothing bad, of course, but if we can make sure that every action we take is also aiming to basically improve the customer satisfaction, create the right expectations, right? There's a lot about experience that hasn't been considered in the past, and today we absolutely should.
Absolutely. And can I come back to one, because I think it's something which is really relevant for me when I put my hat on as a consumer. I go and stay in hotels, work and leisure. The one thing which is really relevant to me always is an early check-in and perhaps a late checkout. And this, it's not very creative. I know it's one of those traditional things, but it's one which I don't see a lot of hotels engaging with. I understand there are some operational difficulties, but there's so many of that. I'll turn up at 10 o'clock on a business trip and they'll tell me, okay, you can leave your bags here and come back at 3 o'clock. But I know from working with hotels that some of those rooms are going to be clean before 3. And I would happily, give them some revenue if they'd let me check in before, but there's just a disconnect there. Is that one which is popular with hotels that work with you?
Yes, it is. Actually, late checkout, I think, is the third most sold deal. So
Okay.
you're totally aligned on this with what actually is reality. Early check-in is successful, I would say, mostly on business-oriented hotels.
Yeah.
But late checkout is really, really popular. So there's a huge demand for that. And I think hotels should, as you said, think of ways of offering it as early as possible on the experience of the guest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the hotels that do that, do you have any experience? Do they find is it a challenge operationally to kind of manage the rooms and the housekeeping, or is that kind of just something once they've got their head around it, it runs smoothly?
I think most of them kind of keep a buffer that they know that they can sell automatically up to X amount of late checkout according to historical data, etc. And the other thing they do whenever they are over this buffer, basically they just keep it pending and wait for the guest to arrive and see live what's the availability for it. So there's not always instant gratification in these processes, because as you said, there's a limitation and a constraint related to availability. But I would say that most hotels know every day per season what is a minimum amount of late checkouts, early check-ins that they can guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Another very typical example to close up on personalization and relevancy would be, also understanding the type of guest that you have, being a couple or a family that maybe need a kid package or a babysitting hour, or an individual business guest, right? They have completely different different needs. Imagine, George, you're going for this business trip and you need early check-in, just like you were mentioning before, and then you receive from the hotel a love package offer, and you will be like, yeah, that's not for me. I'm staying here one day and flying tonight, right? So it's very important we think about these things and get them right. Otherwise, you may not win that review that you're looking for and that happy customer. All right, so this was a bit about personalization, and please think about how in the next 10 years that is going to play a role for you whenever it comes to upselling. And remember that upselling is really increasing the guest spend, increasing the average spend per reservation. So if we don't do it right, we don't move this KPI, which is really critical for revenue managers. We just keep what we have. If we are able to get this right, there are higher chances that you increase the average spend per reservation. Now, this is critical for revenue, but when it comes to, as we said a few times already, the experience of the guest, upselling can and should, we think actually should play a role as well. So it's not just about, getting the guest to buy something which solves their problem, because when you help them to get a breakfast or a parking or a dinner reservations, you also are solving their problems, but it's also about getting them so excited that they will actually speak very well of your brand after their stay. And I'm going to bring here some ideas that come from our customer. I'm sure some of you, if you know Oaky, you've heard this before, because we make it very loud when it comes to what our customers come up with. This is a hotel in Brussels, and it's a business hotel with a lot of guests coming only for 1 or 2 nights, and always or many times alone. So the deal was actually called Don't Feel Alone, or don't Feel Lonely. And basically you could book that deal for €5. Of course, there's a wow experience, because the guest would not expect any similar. They would get a goldfish to bring in their room for the night that they stay, and then the day after they will bring it back to reception. Cool things, and it's kind of the bonus of this deal, is that every revenue that comes through this actually go on charity. And you're doing, a nice social thing. You are also showing how your brand cares about this, and at the same time it's free marketing, because of course they went kind of viral online and to different newspapers. So that's very, very positive, of course, for their reputation as well.
I love this, Mattia. I actually hadn't heard of this before. I was just seeing it when I scanned through the presentation before we joined, and I think this is great. This is the sort of thing, again, putting my consumer hat on, this would really catch my attention. Even if I didn't, go for it and buy it, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, it would really stick in my mind in terms of the brand, and maybe make me more likely to talk about the hotel, to leave a review. So I really love this one.
Yeah, and what's nice is that this comes 100% from the hotel, right? It's not something we suggested them. So it turns out hotels are very creative. Maybe they don't know yet because they haven't put that much effort, being overwhelmed with operations and efficiency and cost cutting these days. But there's actually much more they can do. And of course, you need to put some time into it. A second one.
Sorry, yeah, just what you were saying before, before we started the webinar, that often hotels will tell you, I don't really have much to upsell. And, already we've talked about, even if we were imagining a limited service hotel in a city center, my points about early check-in, late checkout, the goldfish, parking, there's already several things that even a limited service hotel could potentially upsell. So there's always opportunity, Mattia.
And also now you made me think about something, George. You were saying that maybe a city hotel, which seems to be business, but I see myself traveling for business and maybe booking 2 more nights to stay longer the weekend when I go to the UK, to Brighton, to Barcelona, because we happen to travel maybe. And that's when when business wants to be a bit leisure as well. So yeah, we need to think about those things. These are all opportunities that are there, and these are all money on the table, which we can capture if we do the right things. Yeah, this is just another example. This is a hotel actually in Amsterdam, and a 3-star property. So I'm not sure that would apply for, let's say, a 5-star luxury hotel. But basically, what they're saying is, if you stay with us for 2 nights, you can ask to not have housekeeping, which eventually for this hotel was outsourced, so they were going to save money. And what they say is that by not cleaning your room, they will save energy and water, which is absolutely true. They do it more for cascading, I believe. But guess what? Guests were super excited about it because they had a free pizza in exchange. So they would take it and then they would go for dinner at the restaurant. They would get the restaurant full. And when people were walking outside, they will see a crowded restaurant, which is more attractive than a empty restaurant. And eventually they would get some also locals to have dinner there. So you see how you can, play with dynamics around your outlets at the property and maybe see what happens. This is not always, of course, working 100%. I'm sure there are a lot of our customers trying out things and then they don't work, but that's also fine. That's also part of upselling, we believe. Run some tests, try different pictures because maybe one image won't work, won't be nice or attractive enough, and see afterwards how that converts and what is the traction you have for one of your offers, basically.
And could you just talk to us? I mean, I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but if we're starting to look at, obviously, revenue managers love a metric and a KPI and a data point, Mattia, with the spreadsheets and everything. So I see here there's a 16.8% conversion. Firstly, could you just kind of talk us through what that means? That might be self-explanatory, and then just maybe throw in some other kind of, what people might expect from your experience about what they might get conversion-wise on other upselling offers. What's a kind of a normal, if you like?
Yeah, very good point. Absolutely. So the conversion that you see mentioned here, it means that out of 100 reservation we exposed this deal to, 16.8 of them, so almost 17 reservation actually took it, which is a very, very high percentage. And this works, of course, for a deal which is offered to a specific profile of guest in a city like Amsterdam, right? If I'm offering this to a different hotel, to different guests in another city, may have a very different conversion rate. And when we talk about conversion rate and something, then you could look at by implementing any solution or your own upselling strategy at the hotel. We're able to drive today, I would say, 11% conversion rate across all the offers of the hotel. So out of 100 people, running Oaky, going through Oaky as guests, that 11 of them will spend more money. So if you can get any close to 10% with your upselling, efforts, that would be very, very great. Consider that an e-commerce where you buy maybe some fashion items or other things is able to drive maybe up to 3% in terms of conversion, the very good ones. So I think upselling, it has some facilitation in the fact that guests already have a reservation. So any communication you have with them, if you do a good personalization, tends to be relevant, and therefore there's a higher chance to get some click through and to get some sales. But yeah, I would say any close to 10%, you can be happy with it.
Okay, so that's something for hotels to be aiming for. I guess it takes a little bit of effort to set this kind of thing up in the beginning and kind of, learning as you go along. As you said, not everything works, but if they can put a bit of effort in at the beginning, then they should be running at kind of a 10% metric is more or less what to aim for. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think also depends, of course, on which upselling you do, because our data are from a pre-stay and in-stay upselling, but I'm pretty sure that some people joining and working maybe in hotels and doing upselling at the front desk, I'm pretty sure that, if you have a good trained front desk team, 1 out of 10 customers buys something extra. So I think, we should be consistent how we convert throughout the journey, basically.
Yeah. And I'll just share, Mattia, sorry, and then I'll be quiet for a few minutes. But I just asked the attendees, is there any other sort of funky upselling ideas? So we had someone come in with a nice one. This is in the UK, somebody offering American food boxes specifically to their US guests with stays longer than 5 nights. So this is kind of, I guess, quite niche and there's been segmentation there. So it's a great niche segment to those US guests who are away from home for a long period of time and perhaps missing those kind of home comforts. So that's kind of, again, thinking a bit outside the box and kind of playing into what you said about relevance and segmentation. So yeah, a nice example there as well.
Yeah, love it, love it. That's a very good one, and you will see in a slide or two that F&B actually plays a big role into upselling when it comes to ancillaries. As you mentioned, UK, which might be our biggest audience and is a market I look after specifically. There are hotels doing amazing things, from their own cocktail recipe to turning one of their rooms in an escape room for the guests and for the public. There's a hotel in Edinburgh doing a deal called Treat Me Like I'm Famous, and they get in the room playing the song We Are the Champion and offering a new like a assortment of different cocktails. So yeah, there's a lot of space for doing cool stuff.
Wow, yeah. One particular, I don't know if they were upselling it, I don't know exactly how, but a hotel I work with, I don't think they're online, but Georgian House in London, they converted one of their small rooms, I think it might have even been a bathroom before, as a tiny room in a townhouse in one of these London townhouse hotels, and they just converted it by putting a flat screen TV in there, a small sofa, and they called it London's smallest cinema. And
Nice.
there you go, made revenue out of something which was just sitting there before. So that was a nice one.
Just thinking about it, how cool is it?
Yeah, and again, the media and the PR they got from that was just, it's just a quirky kind of thing. So
There you go.
plenty of ideas out there.
There you go. All right, so I think as we were just saying with George, there's really a lot of space for coming up with ideas of every type. Just put some effort and brainstorm with your team. I think the thing we learned is that revenue managers cannot do all of these themselves, because they might have great ideas revenue wise, but then operation will tell you, hey, this is not feasible for some reasons. So I think it comes really back to the fact that it's important to work as a team when it comes to upselling, having maybe marketing driving and the process of getting you the right content, the right descriptions, pictures, and then having revenue to say, okay, we take this direction, we use this pricing, and so on and so forth. So it's really a team effort. And you were mentioning F&B, which I said it's of course a big contributor. What do you think sells the most, George? If you would have to say two or three, well, we said a few. We said already late checkout, breakfast, but we have here a chart that shows different percentages. What do you say hotels are also selling?
Alcohol.
Yes. Yes, a lot of it.
Yeah, so I'd say beer and wine would be up there in the room. Parking.
Yes, very good one.
Yeah, would as well as the couple we mentioned, they would be the ones that spring to my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about alcohol, you made me think that on New Year's Eve, we always have this deal about like cocktail drinks and bottle of wine in your room. And especially this year, you could only be served in many countries F&B in your room. So there was a spike in our charts of sales for that specific deal, which was insane.
What was the conversion rate on New Year's Eve?
I think it was really a ridiculous number, like 2 digits. Ridiculous, yeah. So in this chart, you see what's the contribution per areas. No surprise, F&B plays a big role. Transportation, also kind of very heavy. Hotel services, where late checkout, early check-in seats are also playing a big role. I always like to get hoteliers to pay attention to activities and other, and specifically other. This 7% is actually all the things we have talked about so far. The ideas that goes a bit beyond what your competitive set does, because it's also about positioning yourself if you want. So yeah, creativity actually can lead to up to 7% of your total upsell revenue, and that's a very interesting number. All right. So with this, we close a bit two topics which are quite big, but I try to squeeze them as much as possible, like personalization, relevancy, and creativity. and nice ideas that can be implemented. Another question we receive very, very often is how many things to offer. We aimed with Revenue Ready to really give you a few actionable ideas for something you could apply right away. So this is something actually you can do right away if you're offering something in your pre-stay or in your website or in any other channel. So I'll start with a very short story, which some of you might have heard already. But basically, there was this study in year 2000 from some American university, and within a shop, these two professors put 24 gems and 6 gems, and they say, let's see how many people stop in front of these two groups of items to kind of detect their interest. And it turns out 40% of people stopped in front of the 6 gems, and up to 60% of people stopped in front of 24 gems. So big amounts actually capture quite some attention. But then they said, if you're interested in revenue, then we want to know how many of these people actually spent money on these gems, how many of them actually purchased something. And it turns out that only 3% bought something from this big, let's say, assortment. And then up to 30% bought something when exposed to only 6 gems. This is something I'm sure a lot of you know already as the paradox choice, but basically giving too many options to our customer can be demotivating. This is true not only for upselling, it's true also when you sell your rooms. It's true in your life, I would say. It's a good rule to keep in mind. So for upselling, this is what we see. If you look at ancillaries and rooms, let's say that the perfect amount of units to show to your customers goes up to 11, 15 for services and up to 5 when it comes to rooms. Of course, depending on type of property, you may have a bigger set of offers, but if you use well personalization, maybe every guest will still see 10 to 15 offers, even if you would have activated many more, which are addressed to different profiles of customers.
Just for some context here for the hoteliers online, Mattia, are we saying that, you'd be offering perhaps you've got sort of 11 to 15, 10 to 15 ancillary services? Would that generally be in the context of a pre-stay email, or is that throughout the whole guest journey, or is this in one hit?
Yes, that's good to mention. Actually, for us, these are data coming from pre-stay upselling. Absolutely. If you would ask me how that would look like at the front desk, which is maybe a bit out of our expertise, but I would definitely say that the front office manager should go for one offer, very well thought according to the guest profile and what has been their behavior in the pre-stay. For example, if you have in the pre-stay customers buying a lot of F&B and drinks, you know that guest is interested in probably that area. And when they come at the front desk, you target them with a specific offer. You would not have time to, or maybe you would if they ask you, but otherwise you would not, show them a list of 15, 20 different deals.
So this is generally being received in their pre-stay email.
Yeah.
It's kind of a list of different kind of products and services that I might be interested in.
Correct. Well noted. All right, so the last topic, which I started at the beginning, we're really becoming passionate and also more knowledge about, is how to merchandise products differently from the past. A lot of, there's these buzzwords starting to go around called attribute-based selling. And I know that for revenue manager and revenue management system, that's something a lot of companies are thinking about. We call it, of course, attribute-based upselling in our case. And it's insane the amount of things you can do with upselling, because your rooms, we've talked a lot about ancillaries, and now we'll tell you something about rooms just to make sure I cover also this topic. I think historically hotels have always sold their rooms according to categories: standard, superior, deluxe, doubles, family rooms, presidential, executive. But what else can we do to offer the same rooms in a different way? Or even if you want, like, get out of these structures that we have been accustomed to, just to see if there are revenue opportunities and ways of selling our rooms a bit different. And you see some examples here really getting crazy according to the seasonality, for example, or the type of bath that is available. if it's a connecting room, a balcony. I don't know, George, if you can think of any, but I'm sure any of us can think of a hotel where they have been recently and come up with some ideas. I know that TripAdvisor is a good source of information where you can see some attributes per rooms. OTAs are starting to show some of these attributes, but it's still a bit poor, I would say. If you have no idea what makes a superior room that you have better than another superior room, we always say speak to your front office team and ask them where they would sleep at night if they had to stay at the hotel and they could choose any room. I'm sure they will tell you that there's one they would sleep at for whatever reason. Can be a better view, can be first floor, they don't like doing stairs or elevators, can be a lot of different things. You have any idea what to add here, George? What could you think of?
Well, no, I had more a question for you, I guess, because I think attribute-based selling is probably, you know, a whole other webinar in itself, right? It's a very interesting topic and a hot topic for kind of revenue management systems and revenue managers. But just, you know, as we maybe people taking the first steps into it, Mattia, as you just showed some examples there, on an operational level, have you seen any tips on how they would implement those things? It's just having a really good setup in the PMS and training the staff to kind of use these different attributes in the rooms. Is that coming from being pulled from the PMS into a system like Oaky to enable them to do that?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question, George. And it is because just because hotels are, you know, using this categorization for rooms, also the systems that they're using for their inventory follow the same structure, being their PMS, channel managers, and so on and so forth. So it's very hard to have an inventory. When we start working with hotels, we'd love them to tell us, hey, I have this system with open API with this inventory for each and every attribute of my rooms that we can leverage. It's never the case. Some very advanced companies maybe have an Excel to track the attributes, and it's still very far from an ideal scenario, no? What I would say to get started smooth and with some, you know, proactive way of finding how this could work in your hotel, it could be really brainstorming with your front office team on what are the characteristics that make some of your rooms unique, and try to sell them even in your website if you want, where yeah, you need to see how your channel manager can distribute these to different channels, but maybe start from your direct website where you have a bit more control and you can customize eventually the UI and the UX and the purchasing process the way you want in an easier manner. And when it comes to upselling, I would say absolutely feel the freedom of doing that. Like if you're using a pre-arrival solutions like Oaky or any other, also via email, try to start selling your rooms with the attributes and see how much demand you receive from them. Because of course you want to make sure you put effort on developing something afterwards if you've seen traction before. If there's big demand for it, and I'm sure some hotels will see tons, then maybe you can start speaking to your PMS and channel manager and say, hey, we've seen this data from some tests we have run on merchandising our product a bit differently. How can your development help us to put this into place? Maybe that's not something doable in 1 or 2 quarters, but if it's part of the vision and the roadmap of your providers, that's already a good news that will help you work together with them.
Okay, so I'm hearing there, Mattia, speak to your front office staff and try and learn from their knowledge and understanding of what guests are looking for already, or how they view the rooms. Number 2 would be maybe start slow. Don't try and go from 0 to hero straight away with attribute-based selling, but just try and, you know, maybe just one thing. And number 3 is to then test that out. Number 4 being just start the conversation with your tech providers to see if this is something, again, not going from kind of 0 to hero, but if it's something which is on the roadmap and we can kind of build a strategy towards. I think that's some good.
Correct. And I think some companies are already moving the first steps. I know RMS we are doing it. These are deals from our customers. So I think there's the possibility to start doing it. We need a bit to start from some point.
Great, thank you.
All right, so I think that was a bit the presentation I had in mind for today, and it's really going back to and ramping up what we just discussed, starting from relevancy, going down to creativity, Don't let traditional things being always the same that you are selling. Think about new ways of selling your product, and make sure you don't overwhelm your customer with too many options, because they will end up not buying anything. Um, one last good news for everybody, because that's we're in a situation where we have more bad news than good news these days. So we looked at our data for 2020, and as you can see in this chart, in orange is the amount of bookings, which went, of course, down drastically any times there were some waves of this virus. But, and that's the good news, the average spend per reservation kind of remains steady. And we're seeing this also in 2021. So how much a guest wants to personalize their stay, adding an extra treat, or getting themselves to enjoy something or solve one of their problems, which could be just, what am I going to visit once I get to that place? No, even if we're talking about a staycation. So guests do want to enjoy when they travel, and there's therefore the opportunity to increase the average spend per reservation. We just need to do it the right way. Occupancy will still be a struggle maybe in the reopening the next months. We don't have that completely solved just yet, but maybe it's actually a better moment to start testing things in upselling when you don't have 95-98% of occupancy. So maybe the next month is actually when testing a few new things will become easy, because we won't have a full hotel. Certainly there'll be some operation to restart, and that's never easy. But I would say the timing and this pandemic has given us a lot of opportunities to try new things, and upselling should be one of them. So I'll close up with this really. I think this chart tells us a very good news. And that is it.
There you go. I did promise an animated GIF at the start, didn't I? And there it is.
It's my marketing always making us very funny.
This is fantastic. Mattia, so thank you very much. So first of all, just we've had Adrian commenting on the chat again, just apologising that that she kind of stood you up this morning and you were landed with me, but she has been online and said it was amazing and a really good presentation, which I wholeheartedly agree with. So yeah, she was just asking me to extend her thank yous to you for giving the presentation, and apart from that, yeah, I'd say I would be that my comment would concur. It was a really interesting presentation, as I kind of thought, and I think it's something which, as we've discussed, one of the themes today, it's something which hoteliers can get started with almost straight away, right? It doesn't have to be something which is overwhelming. Of course, there's technology like Oaky out there to help you, but it's something you can almost implement. With some of these tips, you can implement it for your reopening and start to see hopefully an increase in revenue. So yeah, I mean, Adrian's just commenting again there that that customers, maybe if you have any comment on that customers will also be interested in experiences coming out of the pandemic. People have been kind of held in their houses for long periods of time.
Yeah.
At the same time, hotels have perhaps been, trying to think outside the box, like you've suggested about, maybe their chefs doing live cooking sessions and cocktail making experiences. So perhaps a kind of collision of those two things again could be a great opportunity for, for these kind of upselling opportunities you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned something a lot of us in the industry is also hoping for, having this revenge spending, we call it, together with some pent-up demand per destination whenever travel would be allowed with some safety and not too many constraints. It is true, I think a lot of us are looking forward to the next holidays. This is not different from somebody not working in hospitality. So I think upselling could capture a really a lot of value whenever we're allowed to travel, and we should be getting ready for it.
Absolutely. We do have a couple of questions coming in now, Mattia. So I think we've got a few minutes left, if it's okay with you. So some of these might be a bit more specific or about your kind of technical knowledge. So I have one here. Would you create a separate landing page for each of these offers?
Yeah, it's a broad question. I guess depends a bit when you're offering it and how. If you're thinking about the website, I would say that it's normal to have a page with eventually all your extras or all your packages or experiences. Every hotel use a different terminology, and then you can click in each one of them to see more. More or less the same works in Oaky. You have a landing with all of them, and then you can click for each one of them to see more specifically what it is about. But this question from the Indra, I think is very good to actually give me the opportunity to tell you something. It's key when you upsell something, when you offer something, to be very specific on what the offer is about. If you're traveling to a hotel, George, and you see an offer for a white wine for 50 euros or 50 pounds, you'll be like, wow, interested. Maybe I'll have a second look whenever I'm at the property, you know. But if you see that is a white wine coming from a specific region which has a story behind it, and they tell you they will serve it in this way with some strawberry next to it, they let you choose the time of the day when you want to have it, etc., then you feel more comfortable on spending those pounds. So it's very important to actually be specific on what we're selling.
Again, it goes back to a bit of thought and a bit of effort at the beginning will probably pay dividends afterwards, rather than just throwing out something generic. So we have one. Okay, so this is actually an anonymous attendee question, which is going to put you on the spot a bit here, Mattia. So it says, what do you think would be a good offer to put out there in the market post-pandemic? I'm looking for ideas. So I guess we've talked about a few ideas today, but let's put you on the spot and say you are a an independent hotelier, 50-bedroom hotel, never done anything with upselling, and you're opening up in the UK on the 17th of May. What would be your one kind of go-to offer you'd go for, do you think?
Wow, I will have to ask if it is a leisure oriented, if they're next to the sea.
I'll take the executive decision to say, yeah, we're a leisure property in a coastal town.
Okay, yes, then I will think probably of some very leisure activity. And when I say activities, because if I think about any of us living in a country and used to travel maybe abroad and having experienced a little of actually where we live, the moment we actually visit a city, if I think I'm living in Amsterdam, but if I would have to stay in I don't know, Groningen in the north of the Netherlands, I know nothing about the area. So if the hotel can offer me a one-day tour or a walk through the vineyard, or even a picnic in the beach if you're next to the sea. Think about some of these activities that can help your guests to experience the place where you actually are located. I'm sure they will love it. And then, of course, next to it, you'll have other things that eventually drive revenue and are more easy to provide, which you are doing already and that we have mentioned today. But I will say start thinking about some activities for the guests that do staycations, basically.
Fantastic. Yeah, comes back to the comment we had earlier about the with the staycation, people will be looking for experiences. They've been in their houses for the last year and they want to get out and kind of have that experience. And if that's in a local town or market, then all the better. Okay, Mattia, so we have as I say, we do ask our presenters quite strictly, not for no kind of selling, because that's not what the series is about. So thank you for kind of keeping Oaky out of it to a certain extent and just giving us your expertise, which is really valuable. However, I know at Oaky are very active. You're always doing lots of things to help hoteliers in terms of your kind of online sessions and kind of teaching sessions and free offers. So is there anything you would like to tell our attendees about Oaky, a specific kind of offer or something that's going on at the moment?
Yes, and I'm gonna stick to the educational mood of today.
Even better.
I don't know if I should paste a link somewhere. I should have put that in a slide, or maybe it was and I didn't realize. But basically, we have this. We launched a quarter ago. It's called Oaky Courses. So it's a free course made of 10 lessons where different colleagues explain different topics. There's everything that I said today and much more. So again, it's fully educational. It works also if you are in hospitality, but maybe in a restaurant or in a cruise, you still have and can do upselling. So I really encourage you to have a look. I don't know, maybe I can paste this in the chat for all panelists and attendees.
Yes, so if you do that now, and then what we'll do, Mattia, is we'll also include it in the follow-up email, which the attendees get, and all of our anyone who's expressed interest in revenue ready. So we'll make sure that that goes out. So yeah, just a comment asking to share the link. So
yeah,
you should be able to see that now, Edna, in the chat that Mattia's put it to all attendees, but it will also go out in the email afterwards. So that sounds fantastic, Mattia. I'll have a look at that myself. And yes, other than that, then thank you very much for joining. Thank you for a great session. Sorry I interrupted you so much.
No, love it. Good to have some background, you know, because we speak a lot of things that maybe seems a bit standing by themselves, and this way I think it was very practical also. So really appreciate, and thanks for inviting me.
No problem. Yeah, and yes, as a revenue management system, we're all about increasing revenue, so it was nice to speak to someone along the same lines. So thanks again. Yeah, a few thank yous coming in from our panelists, so thanks for everyone for joining. The recording will be available, will be sent out to everyone in an email afterwards as usual, but apart from that, I think it's just all that's left to do is say goodbye, Mattia.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody. Thank you. Bye bye.